Second part of today's lecture will be devoted to the key aspects of the recent history of South Korea from 1990s to 2000s in Lee Chang-dong's films. Lee Chang-dong's first film, Green Fish, 1997, tells the story of a 26-year-old young man named Mak-don, who has returned from the army and is looking for his place in civilian life. His hometown of Ilsan has become a suburb of Seoul. The high-rise buildings of the metropolis are literally advancing on the poor house of his parents. The Mak-don's family is in a bad state. The mother cleans other people's houses. The young brother sells chicken eggs and earns a penny. Elder one has a mental disorder, and the middle one works as a policeman, constantly drinks and quarrels with his wife. The sister moonlights as a prostitute and nevertheless at first supplies Mak-don with money. Freedom turns out to be imaginary, and the main character had to become a member of the gang, choosing a short criminal scenario of his life. Mak-don's gang is kept not by money, but also by love. He is in love with a girl of a crime boss who, in moments of despair, whispers in pure Russian, "Lord, what will happen to me?" And this sent the Russian viewer back to the dashing 1990s with everyday dramas of innocent guys and suffering lost women. The return of a Korean guy from the army and his quick inclusion in gang warfare looks consonant with the Russian film Brother, directed by Alexei Balabanov, also released in 1997. In both films, we sympathize with the main characters who failed to adapt to civilian life after serving in the army due to different social circumstances, but in similar psychological situations. In South Korea, the 1990s are associated with the democratic transformation of society. Its transformation into a super-urbanized and economically developed society. In Russia, in those years, there was a bandit redistribution of capital after the collapse of the Soviet Union. In Korea, as well as in Russia, those who had neither a job nor a dream but wanted quick money had to join the criminal community. As Allah Hwan, an expert on Korean cinema, writes, Lee Chang-dong applied the principle of Han, inescapable sadness, suffering in Green Fish. In this crime drama, the author raised sympathy for his hero to an uplifting epic tragedy. Green Fish shows Lee Chang-dong's unique directing style, which he himself called a reflection of complete desperation. The film Peppermint was filmed in 2000. The film shows 2 decades of recent South Korean history. The tale of lost innocence echoes the social, political, and economic events of Korea's democratic rise. The film is reverse engineered, going from the ending of Yeon-ho's life story to his student days, when he was a pure romantic youth who dreamed of a good future with his girlfriend. Yeon-ho lost all his money as an adult to a stockbroker. He is heavily in debt to a loan shark, and his wife left him. With his last savings, he bought a gun to relieve the weight of his own suffering. Next stop is 1994, where we find Yeon-ho, who owns a small business, has an unhappy marriage, and has an affair. A chance encounter at a restaurant where Yeon-ho runs into a figure from his past leads to the next episode of the film, set in 1987. During this period, Yeon-ho works as a police officer, ready to resort to any illegal means, including bullying people, to squeeze out the missing guilt. When we travel with Yeon-ho to 1984, he is a rookie cop who ends up getting hurt while kicking the first confession out of a suspect. Yeon-ho's defining moment comes in 1980, when while serving in the army, he has to make part in the suppression of student protests in Gwangju, which results in him shooting an innocent student. When the picture comes to the very end, we find the hero at the beginning of the story in 1979, and the action takes place on the same bank of the river as the beginning of the film. This is a milestone of the South Korean democracy movement, when a clash between government troops and pro-democracy students demonstrators resulted in the death of 200 people, mostly civilians. These events plugged South Korean politics to the next 2 decades and eventually led to the arrest and imprisonment of 2 former presidents of the Republic of Korea. Throughout the life story of the 1980s, viewers follow how Yeon-ho's character was tempered by the cruelty and violence that he resorted to while serving in the police. Similarly, at 1980s were a turbulent period for South Korea under the leadership of General Chon Do-hwan, whose iron grip kept the country in a state of martial law and blocked all constitutional reform efforts. Finally, in the 1990s, we see how a life experienced Yeon-ho caught the wave of economic recovery brought about by the new 1988 constitution, but went bankrupt during the economic crisis of 1997, when investors fled the in-debt South Korean economy. The economy slowed down, the currency depreciated, and the country was gripped by rising unemployment and bankruptcies. According to the one critic, Peppermint has a lot in common with American film Forrest Gump in many ways. Just as the protagonist of Robert Lee Zemeckis' 1994 film was the epitome of the American people, and his historical adventures reflected the experience of the baby boomer generation. Yonho is a symbol of the South Korean people and their desperate struggle for democratic institutions and values. The national context of social issues and the transformation of the political and economic life of society are inextricably linked with Lee Chang-dong's portrayal of family life in South Korea. The psychological dramas of Lee Chang-dong's film characters always unfold against the backdrop of family history. In the film Green Fish, we see a family that cannot give moral support to a 26-year-old guy who has returned from the army. McDon shares his dream with his brother. He wants the whole family to live together and everyone to work together. The brother objects: who will earn money? McDon understands that his family is so unhappy that they stopped dreaming and communicating with each other, trying to survive. McDon remembered how, as a child, he lost his sneakers trying to catch green fish, and all his relatives rushed to his aid in search of his only pair of shoes. However, none of his relatives could save the adult McDon who was trying to get rich. Thus, Lee Chang-dong, in his two films, Green Fish and Peppermint, reflected the years of difficult history of the Republic of Korea in the path to democracy and prosperity, to personal freedom and self-realization, which are now available for young people. Key milestones in the development of South Korea broke and even destroyed the lives of the main characters of these films. And this also reflects the sorrowful realism of Lee Chang-dong, which has become the hallmark of the director.